They called it the world's second strongest military. 40 miles of Russian armor stretching toward Kyiv, tanks, artillery, supply trucks, a steel serpent meant to decapitate Ukraine in 72 hours. But something happened in those forests north of Kyiv that military textbooks will study for generations. The convoy never moved again, not because of NATO intervention, not because of sophisticated weaponry, but because a group of Ukrainian farmers, IT specialists, and weekend warriors had discovered something the Kremlin's war planners never anticipated, that in the age of smartphones and satellites, David doesn't need a sling to kill Goliath. He just needs to know where Goliath sleeps. What you're about to witness isn't just how Ukraine survived. It's how a nation one-fourth Russia's size orchestrated the most devastating intelligence coup of the 21st century, turning Putin's own machinery of war into his greatest weakness. February 24th, 2022. Vladimir Putin launches what he calls a special military operation. Russian intelligence assured him Ukrainian resistance would crumble within days. Their president, a former comedian, would flee. The West would protest, then accept reality. But beneath this familiar narrative of invasion lies a shadow war that began not with tanks crossing borders, but with lines of code written in a Kyiv basement 18 months earlier. See, while the world watched Russia amass 190,000 troops on Ukraine's borders, a different army was being assembled, not of soldiers, but of hackers, engineers, and ordinary citizens armed with smartphones. They called themselves the IT Army of Ukraine. What Western intelligence agencies are only now revealing is that Ukraine didn't just defend against Russia's invasion. They had infiltrated it before the first shot was fired. The question isn't how Ukraine survived Putin's onslaught. The question is, how did Ukraine know exactly where every Russian unit would be, what they would do, and when they would do it? Sometimes before Russian field commanders themselves knew? The answer involved a McDonald's app, a fitness tracker, and the greatest strategic miscalculation in modern military history. Our story begins with a peculiar discovery made by Ukrainian cyber intelligence in December 2021. Russian soldiers stationed near the Ukrainian border were doing something remarkably ordinary: ordering food delivery. Through apps like Yandex Food, Russia's equivalent of DoorDash, Ukrainian intelligence could track unusual spikes in delivery orders to specific coordinates. 20 pizzas to a forest clearing at 2 a.m.? That's not a party. That's a forward operating base. But this was just the beginning. Ukrainian hackers discovered that Russian operational security, their OPSEC, had a fatal flaw: the human element. Russian soldiers, despite orders, kept their personal phones. They used fitness apps. They posted on social media. Each digital breadcrumb alone meant nothing. Together, they formed a real-time map of the entire invasion force. The fitness app Strava became an inadvertent intelligence goldmine. Russian soldiers jogging around their bases created heat maps that revealed not just positions, but patrol patterns, shift changes, and even the layout of supposedly secret installations. But knowing where your enemy is means nothing if you can't act on that intelligence. This is where Ukraine's strategy transcended conventional warfare. In January 2022, 1 month before the invasion, Ukrainian intelligence made a decision that military historians call either genius or insane. They would let Russia come. Instead of reinforcing obvious targets, Ukraine's military dispersed. They moved air defense systems daily. They created fake fuel depots while hiding real ones. They turned their weakness, inferior numbers, into strength by refusing to be where Russia expected them. But the masterstroke was yet to come. Ukrainian hackers had penetrated ERA GLONASS, Russia's military satellite navigation system. Not to destroy it, that would reveal their access. Instead, they watched. They waited. They learned. When Russian columns advanced using their secure navigation, Ukraine knew their routes hours in advance. Artillery coordinates were preset, ambush points selected. The hunters had become hunted, and they didn't even know it. Then came the psychological warfare component, perhaps the cruelest cut of all. Ukrainian intelligence didn't just track Russian phones. They called them. Wives received messages about their husbands' locations. Mothers got photos of their captured sons. The Russian military's own communication infrastructure became Ukraine's most powerful propaganda weapon. We have no fuel, no food. The Ukrainians know every move before we make it. This intercepted call from a Russian colonel revealed the cascade failure. But it wasn't Ukrainian military might that broke the Russian advance. It was something far more insidious. Ukraine had weaponized Russia's own corruption against itself. Ukrainian intelligence knew something Putin's generals couldn't admit. That billions allocated for military modernization had been stolen. Encrypted radios supposedly distributed to troops, sold on the black market. Fuel reserves, siphoned off and sold. Even the reactive armor on tanks, ceramic plates replaced with cardboard. Ukraine knew because they had the receipts. Literally. Through a network of Russian whistleblowers motivated by cryptocurrency payments, Ukraine obtained proof that up to 40% of Russia's military budget had been embezzled. They knew which units had real supplies and which were paper tigers. When Russian forces ran out of fuel approaching Kyiv, it wasn't because Ukraine destroyed supply lines. It was because those supplies never existed. The fuel had been sold months earlier by corrupt quartermasters who filed false readiness reports. Putin's army wasn't defeated by Ukraine. It was hollowed out by Russia itself, and Ukraine simply knew exactly where to push for a collapse. But here's what even most intelligence analysts don't know: the revelation that changes everything about this war. Ukraine's greatest intelligence coup wasn't hacking Russian systems or tracking troop movements. It was something far more profound. They had access to the Kremlin's internal decision-making process itself. 3 days before Putin announced the invasion to the world, Zelensky knew, not through NATO intelligence, not through satellite imagery, but through a source so highly placed that their identity remains Ukraine's most guarded secret. This source didn't just provide intelligence. They provided Putin's actual decision matrices, the scenarios he was considering, the advice he was receiving, even his personal psychological assessments of Western leaders. Ukraine knew Putin believed Biden wouldn't respond militarily. They knew he expected European unity to fracture within weeks. Most crucially, they knew Putin's timeline. He needed victory before May 9th, Russia's Victory Day. So Ukraine crafted their entire defense strategy not to win quickly, but to survive until that date, knowing that missing the symbolic deadline would transform Putin's special operation into a humiliation he couldn't hide from the Russian people. We live in an age where a teenager with a smartphone can track a nuclear submarine, where a fitness app reveals state secrets, where the most powerful armies could be undone not by bullets, but by bytes. Ukraine didn't outfight Russia. They outthought them. They proved that in modern warfare, knowing your enemy's weakness matters more than matching their strength. The lesson isn't just military, it's existential. In a transparent world, where every action leaves a digital shadow, the power doesn't belong to those with the most weapons. It belongs to those who see clearly in the dark. Putin built an army for the 20th century. Ukraine built a network for the 21st. And that difference has cost Russia everything. If you enjoyed this story, please consider subscribing to Militant Secrets, liking the video, and sharing it with friends. Thank you so much for your support.